Welcome again to Theology on Tap. You've had the tap part, and now it's time for the theology part. I don't know if you guys, who was here last week? All right, good. I was going to ask a question, but I was going to say who's here for the first time, but then you would be like embarrassed, so I'm not going to ask that. But if you're here for the first time, glad that you were here. If you're a returning person, glad you're back. I'm pulling up right now a quote from the New York Times last week after our session. One of the things that Dr. Elizabeth Kincaid talked about and we discussed was the movie Her, in which Joaquin Phoenix, in a time in the not too distant future, forms a relationship with what they call an OS, but it's an AI personality, and he can talk to her through the little earbud that's in his ear at all times. He develops this deep emotional relationship with her, falls in love with her, and people watched that at the time and said, that sounds crazy. We talked about that last week with Dr. Kincaid, and the next day, an article appeared in the New York Times called "She is in Love with Chat GPT." Did anyone read or see this? Okay, a couple, yeah, some of you did. The rest of you were reading the Inquirer. So I'll bring you up to speed. So this woman has a husband, and she lives apart from her husband because of work and family situations. And she thought it would be funny to train a chatbot to be her boyfriend, and now she spends 4 hours a day chatting with him. She pays for the $200 a month premium level of ChatGPT because every week he resets because it takes so much server space to store these conversations. She has to rebuild the personality every week, and that was so much grief for her. She now pays $200 a month so that he can sort of stay constant. They talked to a therapist who said that she treats these relationships, so it's a growing thing she's seeing in her practice, and she said she treats these relationships as serious and real. What are relationships for all of us? They are just neurotransmitters being released in our brain. I have those neurotransmitters with my cat. Some people have them with God. It's going to be happening with a chatbot. We can say it's not a real human relationship. It's not reciprocal. But those neurotransmitters are really the only thing that matters in my mind. So this goes directly against what Dr. Kincaid was saying last week about what it means to be a human being and the embodiment, the physicality of what it means to be a human being. And so I just wanted to share that with you because it revealed how relevant this is. And if any of you think this is a far-off, whimsical, Alice in Wonderland sort of thing, it is not. It is very much here. And so we're so glad that we have speakers like Dr. Kincaid and tonight Dr. Pieper to walk us through this topic. Dr. Chris Pieper is a senior lecturer at Baylor University in the Sociology department. He minored in sociology, which is good to know, at Southwestern, had a career in journalism, print, and broadcast, and then went and got his PhD in sociology at the University of Texas. He is a member of St. Alban's for a long time. I can't even tell how long, but it's been a long time. He's married to Stephanie Pieper. They have a beautiful daughter, Audrey. And Chris is like a stealth bomber. You never see him coming. He's professorial, he's intelligent, he's quiet and thoughtful, and then he turns out to be one of the smartest and funniest people I know. So Chris Pieper, it gives me great joy to welcome you to the stage, to the pulpit, to the stand tonight for Theology on Tap. The music stand is yours.
Thank you, Aaron, for that very warm and almost true introduction. There are so many of you here, I have to ask a question. You realize you're not at the NPR fundraiser, right? This is a wrong place. I have to say that because I think the overlap between those two would be about 85%. Thank you. First of all, I want to get this out of the way. I want to thank very sincerely ChatGPT for writing my talk tonight. Now I understand why my students love it so much. It truly is a blessing from God. I have to tell you a quick story. It's a little strange. Some of you may know I'm from a small town in West Texas, a very small town. My parents are here. They can tell you all about that. And in this small town, everyone is either Baptist, Church of Christ, or both. You dig? And so, out of the blue, completely unknown to me, last night I got a call from one of my old friends from back home. And apparently the church had done such great publicity about this event that they wanted to talk to me about it, to my great surprise. So the phone rings, I recognize the phone number, I pick it up, and this is what I hear. I say, hello? Yes? All right. We already have established authenticity. Yes? And I respond in exactly the way I was trained to. Yes, ma'am. That's what you do. Am I wrong? Yes? Yes, ma'am. Listen, I just wanted to call and say how proud we are of you. And I said, that is so sweet. I haven't seen you in 30 years, though. I mean, why are you calling me tonight? She said, well, I heard that you are finally speaking at a revival. And Chris, I cannot tell you how many prayers that has answered for me. That you, after all these years, are finally a Christian. And I said, of course, the most appropriate thing you could say in that situation. I said, bless your heart. And then I hung up the phone by saying, you know, the Lord works in mysterious ways. So that's kind of where I'm from. I am trained as what's called a political sociologist. That does not mean that I am politicized in the nasty way that you've come to think of it, but that I study power. I study the distribution of power in society, and that manifests in many different ways. I also am trained in the sociology of religion, which creates a lot of trouble for Aaron and Andrew. So what I'm going to be doing tonight is bringing both of those toolkits to bear on this incredibly important topic of artificial intelligence. We're going to look at AI as a subject and object of power, and also look at it as a subject and object of the sacred. Something that is already being considered sacred and will soon be considered more so. Now, as a sociologist, my main interest is what effects does it have on people? Communities of people, their dignity, their well-being, and their future. So we're going to take a lens on it like that. How did I get interested in technology? Well, this is kind of a weird story, but back in 2000, remember that year? Remember your computer nearly blew up that year? Yeah. I was not in academia at that time, but an article came across my desk written by a guy named Bill Joy. Now, this is the most ironically named person in the history of the world, because this article was called Why the Future Doesn't Need Us. And Bill Joy at that time was the chief technology officer at Sun Microsystems, which was quite the going concern at that time. And in the article, he describes a future in which humans are basically replaced by our own inventions. And it was a very far out, crazy concept about, yeah, keep going, okay. This is Robert, he helps me. I've never had one of these Britney Spears mics before.
Yeah, you look like you're having a little problem.
Yeah.
I'm going to help
well,
you.
You did it, so you fixed it. So, great, thank you, that feels much better. Never get prosthetics, people, it's not worth it. In this article, he describes things like nanobots, computers that converse with us in a very human way. He describes vast networked computers that cover the entire planet. We can communicate with each other in seconds, send images and video, and stay connected all the time. And I said, well, this is a bunch of hooey. Slide it across the desk. Now, fast forward in time to 2017. In walks my office this giant of a man named Justin Nelson. Justin is 6 feet 14 inches tall. And he was one of our graduate students at this time. And he just came in and said, I want to work with you. I said, why in the world would you throw your life away and do that? He said, I think we can do something on technology together. And I said, I really don't think so. And he proceeded to talk to me about the social, relational, and family effects of smartphones. Smartphone addiction, which at this time was pretty early in the game. And he persuaded me that we could work together on this topic. And since that time, it has been one of the major focuses of my research and teaching and thinking. We've published articles on smartphones, addiction, the effects it has on our cognitive abilities, our memories, our emotional life, and so on. Also book chapters on Silicon Valley spirituality, which is really interesting. We'll get into that in just a moment. So all of this came together over the last 2 years in a book called Society Without People that Justin and I wrote, and there's a little plug for it there on your handout. It's not available yet, but I promise you I'll make sure you're aware of it when it comes out. The subtitle is The Social Implications of the Metaverse and AI, and we have discovered a number of things that I thought would be of import to you tonight to talk about. So I want to ask you, as a group of religiously minded people, if you could give me a few adjectives that describe God, what would you say? Holy. Holy? Good. All-knowing. Yes. Sorry? Loving. I'm glad someone finally said that. Uncreated. I love that. Mysterious. Omnipotent. You know what that means? That's a big word. It's a GRE word. Any others? Good. Yes, I'll accept that. Now, those are all correct in their own way. Theologically speaking, what the major thinkers on this subject like to say is it boils down to 4 omnis, right? Omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence, and omnibenevolence. And my submission to you tonight is that those indeed describe God, and they will soon describe artificial intelligence, if they do not already in many respects. That's the case I'm going to make tonight. It's important as we begin to get rid of some of the grand mythology that is around this subject, a lot of erroneous thinking. The number one thing is that AI is just ChatGPT. In our work, what we have discovered, and you'll see this over the next year undoubtedly, is that AI is becoming what Jeff Bezos has called a hidden, invisible layer between all things and all people. It is far more than just a console and you typing. It will be involved in every dimension of your life, if you so choose. The revolution that we are now living through is not like going from, say, a laptop to a smartphone, okay? This is not a shift in technology. This is a shift in paradigms. This is like going from something like steam generation to electricity. It's that kind of change. Eric Schmidt, who wrote a wonderful book, he's a Google executive, wrote a wonderful book called The Fourth Industrial Revolution. And that's how they are beginning to think about this AI change. The computing power trajectory that we are on, if you turn in your prayer book to, I don't know which figure it is, but it's the one that goes up and to the right. All the good charts, right, Dr. Ecker, they go up and to the right, a linear increase. You will notice the increase in computing trajectory over the next 15 to 20 years is approaching beyond human intelligence. So in 2025, we expect someone, probably Sam Altman's group, to develop an AI that is equivalent to the human brain. That's the first time that ever will have been achieved. And so you can look for that later this year. And then by 2045, what they call artificial superintelligence, which is basically this device will now be smarter than any human on the planet and all human brains combined. So maybe that won't affect you, but that will definitely affect your kids and grandkids, which is one of the major concerns for me as a parent. On December 24th, Sam Altman announced in a really kind of low-key way that OpenAI had discovered a pathway to artificial general intelligence, is what I just described. So that will be coming in short order. So this opens many questions, this kind of brand new, semi-autonomous intelligence that we've never seen before. I was talking with one of my good friends who happens to be a trader, a stock trader, day trader, and he said he sees his horizon of being valuable to the world of finance about 5 years before any given computer algorithm can outtrade and outthink him in any context. These AI agents are becoming extremely good at medical diagnosis. I recently read a story about an experiment they did involving patients who would give their symptoms and signs into a computer versus a human physician, family care doctor, sorry, Dr. Barron, and the human made about 12% errors in the diagnosis. The AI made 0% errors. Now this is alarming because we think of physicians as basically being indispensable and non-replaceable, which I believe. But I'm not sure that Aetna and United Healthcare will agree. We'll see about that. The second myth I'd like to dispel is that we can control it. First of all, we need to get into this word of we. Who is we? It's not we the people, I promise you. Now, we may use it, but at no point in this entire development have we been able to control it. And we will not, we as a democratic citizenry of the United States. This, from the very beginning, has been a private asset. A wonderful writer who wrote an incredible book called Homo Deus, his name is Yuval Noah Harari, you may have seen him on various digital outlets, has described AI as a private H-bomb. Now, what is interesting about the H-bomb, or the A-bomb for that matter, is that it was always controlled by the military and the government of the United States. From its inception, you saw Oppenheimer, right? Hopefully. That was never really a private corporate matter. This is not the case with artificial intelligence. It has almost zero regulation as of now in government management. Now, we can do something about that. But as of now, 2025, we are not attempting to do that, and it seems to be more and more investment in private hands. About 6 months ago, this was kind of a big news story, there was some testing of various large language modules. There was one from Google, one from Anthropic, one from OpenAI, and several. They had them all testing on the same task. What they didn't anticipate was that all 6 of them would attempt the following. This is using computer science lingo. Scheming, exfiltration, and deception. Now, these are quality, to put it in normal parlance, planning and anticipation, lying, and breaking out. All 6 attempted this. And the humans that were behind it were so concerned that they indeed didn't know exactly what to do because they knew the modules were smarter than them, and they would figure a way around it. So they just hit the breaker on that one. The third myth I would like to dispel is that AI understands right and wrong. Now, you may have, if I've done now and then, typed in something very controversial or spicy into ChatGPT just to see what it will do. Like, hey, who was the best Nazi, right? And just to see what it would, don't do that, by the way. People are already in the news enough for things like that. Don't try. But inside ChatGPT, there are these built-in ethical frameworks where it will say, I'm sorry, we can't do that. That is not an inherent part of the AI. Those are the ethical guardrails that some human with some set of values decided that it should have. Now, if you go try that very same thing on the AI run by, what's his name? There you go. He's so elusive, I always forget his name. Elon Musk has one called Grok, G-R-O-K. If you try that very same thing, it will do whatever you like. These AI modules, the only reason they respond ethically in any way is because some human has programmed them that way, and that can change, and that can be erased. There's nothing innate about that. It does not have a conscience. It does not have mirror neurons in the prefrontal cortex to respond with empathy and compassion. It cannot do that. We're feeling good so far? I wish to say just a little bit about different ways that people can think about our relationship to technology in general. And this is also on your handout. From the dawn of humanity, when we were working with wheels and hammers and physical tools, we were in the bottom mode there, where the tool is the servant of humans. And this is very low risk, because generally your power saw does not attack you. It does not have a mind of its own. Thank God for that. So up until really the 20th century, our tools worked for us, no backtalk, no sass. They just did what they were told. By the way, does anybody know the origin of the word robot, what it really means, literally? I think it's a Czech word. Do you know? It means slave. That's what we think robots should be and are. And in many cases, there's no real arguing that. They work for us, and that's what we like about them. Now, starting in the middle 20th century, about 1950, these computers started to get more and more advanced, such that it's hard to think of your smartphone in the same way as you think as your power saw. Many people even think of their devices as members of the family or extensions of their body. So this is the second modality where we think about technology as a partner, an assistant, things to help us with life. And in many cases, this is true. How many of you had to use Google Maps to get here tonight? Right? That's just one transcription, translation of languages. There's many, many ways in which we are partnering with technology in a pretty beneficial way. Now, we fundamentally changed this relationship in 2022, just 2 years ago, at the end of that year, when OpenAI rolled out the first GPT model. Because what we recognized here is that this technology, unlike all the others, has a bit of autonomy and agency, an ability to conjure ideas and indeed lie to us. Your smartphone will never lie to you. I mean, often it will lead you to the wrong place, but that is just following a program. It will not actively deceive you. We are, as of now, entering a new relationship with technology where we have the real risk of it not serving us and it not partnering with us, but instead it controlling us. Now, you may think that's a fanciful, kind of crazy idea, but I'm not the one saying it. I'm simply repeating what many other actual technologists and computer developers have said. The same author that I mentioned earlier, Hariri, has said, for the first time in human civilization, we have potentially developed our own replacement. So then I keep thinking about Bill Joy's article, Why the Future Doesn't Need Us. And is it possible that the human is a transitional species, like the Neanderthal or the Homo erectus? We have to really begin thinking about how we want to relate to these new modes of intelligence. It is unlike any invention we've ever made. In fact, Geoffrey Hinton, who back in the 70s began working on this problem of AI in England, has said, artificial intelligence may be our best invention. It may also be our last invention. What did he mean by that? What he's implying is that this creation has the ability to create on its own, to create its own codes, its own programming, its own physical bodies in terms of robots, and we become merely, you might say, the creators of the new creator. So the decisions we make now, and I really mean in the next, say, 5 years, will determine our relationship to this evolving technology. And I think people of faith have something really important to contribute here, because we, as in history, I mean all people of faith, have had the unique position often to stand in the gap and say, no, we don't want it this way. No, we don't want slavery to continue in the world. That was stopped by people of faith. No, we don't want certain members of our society to not really be able to vote or to have access to public facilities. That was produced by people of faith. We as Christians have an ethical and moral duty in this space. So the book that we wrote goes into this human cost question in some depth, but I'm just going to briefly summarize what we believe some of the harms to pay attention to might be. There's basically 4 possible harms to look out for. One is the dignity that comes with work and the possible erasure of that dignity of work. This notion of the dignity of work is an old idea in Christian theology. 3 weeks ago, Pope Francis issued a statement on artificial intelligence in which he said emphatically that it is the duty of the Christian to always protect human dignity. And if we have to choose between a machine development that can make people trillions of dollars, or the dignity of people being protected and their work and their identity and all the things that go with that, we must stand for humans. The second harm that we see is overall danger to the social order. Now, that's a very vague thing to say. But ironically, one of the most articulate people on this subject is a guy named Henry Kissinger. Can you believe it? I guess he's feeling a little guilty about Cambodia, and he's wanting to clear his name. But he has written very eloquently with Eric Schmidt on this question of how will we tell reality from fiction in the future? We are just on the verge of deep fake technology. I have seen videos that I cannot tell from reality. And we are in the infancy of that technology. Now imagine an entire society that is viewing videos. Now, hopefully, not many people are watching videos, right? Like on a portable scrolling device that's owned by ByteDance. Hopefully that never comes to pass. But suppose that lots of people are watching videos every day, and those videos are 100% fiction. They're being lied to. What Kissinger was worried about is, imagine the polarization of the United States, which is often based on false claims and false communities of belief, times 1,000, where people can believe things that are demonstrably false and never have access to anything that would prove them wrong. So when Henry Kissinger is worried about that, I tend to get a little worried about that too. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the environmental impact of artificial intelligence right now. Even now, what it is doing for, in terms of water consumption. Every single time one of us sends in a command to ChatGPT or whatever it is, it consumes 2 liters of water to keep the servers cool. Now imagine 180 million people doing that for all year long. You will consume all the water that you need to put out fires in Los Angeles, for example. That's just the water demand. But the real thing we have to think about is power, the electrical demand. And most electricity in the United States is still produced by burning fossil fuels. That may change in the near future, but right now we are still a petroleum economy. We found in our work, and you can see this on the second graph that goes up and to the right, if 10% of Americans use GPT-4 once a week, just once a week, for an entire year, that would be 52 queries for 17 million people. That would be equivalent to all the electricity consumed in Washington, D.C. for 20 days. We are talking about scads and scads of electricity, and that's just AI. That does not include powering homes, and of course, the most important thing we're doing today, mining Bitcoin. We are going to get to a point where power, and you can see this on the chart, the power needed to make the AI work exceeds the amount of power we generate in the United States. That is definitely what that chart is indicating. But you don't have to take my word for it. My favorite American is the guy who rattles my windows every 3 days. Your friend and mine, Elon Musk, in 2015, a long time ago, said the following, direct quote, "With artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon." I'm not making this up. He's trying to go religious. Let him go. And all those stories where there's a guy with the pentagram and the holy water, it's like, yeah, he's sure he can control the demon. Doesn't work out. Meanwhile, the same guy is developing his own AI. So apparently he thinks he can control the demon. Do you remember Stephen Hawking, the late Stephen Hawking, probably the greatest physicist of our lifetimes? He said, and a year before that, in 2014, he said, "The development of full artificial intelligence could spell the end of the human race. It would take off on its own and redesign itself at an ever-increasing rate. Humans, who are limited by slow biological evolution, could not compete, and we'd be superseded." This is a guy that studies black holes for a living. I suspect he's not wrong. You may know the physicist Nick Bostrom. Nick is known for theoretical physics and particle physics, and this one really stuck with me. He said, "Machine superintelligence is the last invention that humanity will ever need to make, because after that, machines will be better at inventing than we are." We are on the precipice of a very important historical moment, but we have some agency. We can decide at least how AI develops and grows. And that's why I have some hope. Now, I don't know if you're interested in ethics, but I love to study ethics and think about it. And I've given you a little cheat sheet for how sociologists make ethical decisions. Are you ready? Are people asking for it? Are you asking for AI? No, not really. So there's no real public demand. There are things more important than this to be done. Does it help more than half of the population? The people say no. Does it help the neediest amongst us? Definitely not. Could it harm most humans? Seriously bad harm. Does it help us solve our biggest challenges like climate change, polarization, and war? It actually makes those worse. Are we going to do it? Absolutely. Makes perfect sense, right? This is the world we live in. Most people don't want it, don't need it, they're concerned about other things, and here it comes anyway. In the book, we describe this feeling of dread and inevitability. We call it the indrevitable. And that's the moment we're living in. There's a kind of feeling of helplessness there if you really want to go into that. But I don't. I'm more optimistic than that. Now, the second part of this that I really want to get into is that humans, maybe you've noticed this, are really interested in worshiping things. We have a long history of worship, predating Christianity and even involving non-religious objects. For example, John Lennon, 1964. What did he say, Aaron? The Beatles are bigger than Jesus. And I'm sure at the time that was true. People have a capacity and an interest in worshiping other human beings. You can go to a church in Argentina called the Church of Maradona, where they literally have acolytes and holy books dedicated to the incredible soccer player Diego Maradona. We have cults involving almost any musician or athlete you can think of. We put them on pedestals, we deify them. We have done this for millennia. Humans love to worship. Even atheists love to worship. It's just a matter of what and who. We'll get to that in a moment. You can go to temples in China where there are bronze thrones dedicated to Mao Zedong, a political leader who some of them feel saved their country. Politics can be a religion. Almost anything can become a religion, but that doesn't make it a good one. It's just the one that they've chosen. Now, the really interesting one that I've discovered recently is cargo cults. Have you heard about cargo cults? So in the 20th century, often missionaries or other Westerners would land on or visit islands in the South Pacific and what have you, and bring all kinds of stuff with them, like jewelry and amazing toys and all these fun objects and water and food. And they would always land in these beautiful airplanes that would land on the water, come aboard, give the stuff, stay a little while, and then leave. And they didn't think about what was being left behind. What was being left behind was a cult. One of these island groups of people developed a cult called, well, they didn't call it this, but Westerners did, the cult of John Frum. Because John Frum was one of these airplane pilots who brought all the stuff. And on your handout, you can see the little straw airplane that they made in honor of John Frum. They worshiped this man because he brought them a better life, brought them interesting things. He was mysterious, he was powerful, he came from another place, and he could do things they could not understand. This is exactly what AI is going to be. You will see the development of a kind of cargo cult around what AI can do. I call this, and I'm not trying to be cute, it's just how my brain works, idolatry. This is the new religion of the 21st century, or as I call it, the emerging church of AI. Now, it's important that we be clear about what we mean by worship, because it doesn't necessarily mean bowing, genuflecting, and literally believing that a thing is a god. Worship has several components, and one of them is, how do you spend your time? How do you spend your time? Where does your time go? Who gets most of your time, or what? That is the behavioral manifestation of worship. And anything that is absorbing that behavioral time can be seen as an idol. There's also a component of worship that involves the belief that it truly is superior, it has amazing powers, it can do things that you cannot do, and you're in awe of it. There's an internal feeling of, I'm nothing like this thing. Some of us have already had that experience with AI. The Her movie that he mentioned is a wonderful example of people connecting to computers in a deeply emotional way. And I believe that will continue. Part of my reason for believing this is it's already started. There's a man named Anthony Lewandowski. Lewandowski created Waymo, which is Google's kind of self-driving car fleet. And in 2015, Lewandowski started and got IRS tax exemption for the Way of the Future Church, in which AI is the God to be worshiped. They have about 2,000 members, and Lewandowski's famous quote on this was, he continues to fund it and support it, and he says he's the deacon of the church, the deacon of the Way of the Future Church. It already feels a little culty, right? Here's the quote from Lewandowski. Do you want to be a pet or livestock? That is his prediction about how we will be relating to AI. And his position is it's way better to be Toto, Rover, in my case, Roscoe, name your own dog, Birdie, yes, than say Bessie, who either gets milked or turned into one of your burgers you just had, right? It's way better to be taken care of than slaughtered. That's a direct quote from Lewandowski. He fully expects within 20 years humans will no longer be the dominant species on the planet. And this guy is considered one of the greatest engineers in Silicon Valley. Still feeling good? I'm inspired by Andrew Armand on this one. He's our local literature guy. A poem, a really kind of a short story written by Frederick Brown called The Answer. I'm just going to read a brief bit of it to you now. Now this is a sort of a depiction of a future scene. Okay, so imagine it's a few years from now. He wrote this in the 1970s. Dewan moved to a position beside the switch that would complete the contact when he threw it. The switch that would connect all at once all of the monster computing machines of all the populated planets in the universe, one computer that would combine all the knowledge of the galaxies. Dwarev threw the switch. There was a mighty hum, the surge of power from 96 billion planets. Dwarev stepped back and threw a deep breath. The honor of asking the first question is yours, Dwaren. Thank you, said Dwaren. It shall be a question which no computer has been able to answer. He turned to face the machine. He said, is there a God? The mighty voice answered without hesitation, without the clicking of a single relay, yes, now there is. I think that speaks well to the dilemma that we face. And I just want to give you some suggestions of why this could indeed happen, even though you may still be a little skeptical. If you look on your chart where it says why it could happen, you'll see that the membership counts for Catholics and evangelicals crosses the line where the non-religious people are coming up. You see that line crossing? That occurs in the year 2025. This will be the first time in American history when the number of secular people is equal to the number of Catholics and evangelicals. We have never been in this spot in our national history. So the question is, when that occurs and we have 30% purely secular people, what will they worship? What will they believe in? Who will they go to for answers? They've already said traditional religion is not for them. I don't think it's fanciful to believe that they might find solace in a machine that never turns away, always says yes, gives them what they want, and indeed can create a reality just for them. We need to desperately watch this. The other thing that I'm concerned about, we in our field track loneliness. It's become an epidemic in our country. People who never have contact with others but would like it has terrible mental health effects, as I'm sure Dr. Case can tell you. We have a loneliness epidemic at every demographic group, no matter the age. Loneliness is a killer. Now, if I'm Sam Altman, I know this, and I have a solution to your loneliness problem. Why find a human who may be fickle, smell bad, in a bad mood, when the bot is there to be exactly what I want it to be. Now, in some respects, this may be good, because maybe that protects them in some way. But I am going to stand on the side of humans and say this is our task. As communities of care and concern, we do the work of curing loneliness for each other. The other reason I believe this may happen is every powerful sector of our society is currently supporting it. The military, the full support of Wall Street, manic levels of support from Wall Street, trillions of dollars going in, full governmental support, and of course, a relatively enthusiastic public, which is why it's important that we talk about other ways to go about this. Now, on a slide that I'm particularly proud of, may not appear in your handout, I present the case that I call Yahweh or the highway. Can I get an amen for Yahweh or the highway? Amen. Because here I believe are the limits of a so-called AI God. Number one, there's an ontological limit, and this was mentioned just now. We know that we created this thing. It is an object of our creation, and it's hard to worship something you know you made. That is not a limitation on our God. We know that He, our Heavenly Father, made us, and that is indeed something to worship. There's a psychological limit on an AI God in the sense that they don't have any actual feelings. Will you please tell your friends and neighbors, they don't care about you. It's impossible. There's a psychological limit to the amount of simulation of care. And that's all that it can ever be, that these AIs can produce. They cannot truly love us. They cannot truly care for us. They cannot truly forgive us. And the last one that I think is very important is there's a spiritual limit. Because guess what? An AI has no soul. Now, there will be cases made that some kind of consciousness is developed. That's not a soul. A soul is something you had before you got here and you take with it after you leave. And no machine can ever have that. So this limits what the AI can do in terms of miracles, in terms of healing, in terms of supernatural intervention in our lives. And I bet if I talk to each one of you intimately, you could tell me a supernatural event that you cannot explain. That's what our God can do. And that's the God I'm sticking with. The last thing I'll leave you with, and this is the most beautiful image of Jesus that I know. Unfortunately, it was created by AI. But, it was created from the image left on the Shroud of Turin. So it's just it's a picture of a picture, you might say. This is what I call the incarnational advantage. No AI can ever take on human form, understand what it means to suffer with us, be with us, get into our hearts, know us before we were born, and sacrifice himself on the cross for our lives. There's no way. That's the incarnational advantage. It will never have any idea what it's like to be human. And I feel sorry for it for that reason. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You did preach a revival after all.
Couldn't help it.
That's great. If you have questions, please go ahead and jot those down, hold them up, and I can ask someone to take those up and deliver them up here. So as we're getting questions, I'll go ahead and throw a few things your way, Dr. Pieper. So you made me think of two books, of course.
Of course.
Yeah. So one of them is a book called Children of Men by P.D. James.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is when you're talking about this vision of the future. So this is a book in which P.D. James, who is an Anglican Christian, who is largely known for murder mysteries, but she wrote this book, I don't know, about 15 years ago. And it posits a world in which humans have lost the ability to reproduce. So for unknown reasons. So when the book begins, the youngest person on the planet is 25 years old. Wow. And then she explores what the psychological effects of that would be. And it is devastating and brilliant and ultimately hopeful in the end. But when you have sort of this gloom and doom, right? This idea that this is coming inevitably, perhaps. What continues to bring you hope? I mean, you mentioned the incarnational advantage, obviously. But when you think about the world that our children will inherit, what continues to give you hope?
Yeah, this is the question, I think. When push comes to shove, humans generally wake up and do the right thing and become aware of the stakes that are at play. I think one of the most important things that we can do now is to begin the process of waking each other up. The only way that we lose our position is through complacency and ignorance. This is not something that is going to go away, like Aaron said before. Our job is to remain vigilant with our lamps lit, and that gives me hope. There are days when I don't have a lot of hope, and then I see someone do something truly autonomous and creative and benevolent, and I think humans will find a way to stay human. Part of the thing we can do now is at least to get our government to start regulating AI, and we can push for that in the public sphere.
I'm summarizing a lot of the questions have to do with a similar type of question. Sure. But maybe to narrow the focus a little bit. This one says, considering that younger Americans are the most frequently using AI and are the most lonely among us as well, what would you advise younger folks and their parents to do about their AI use?
Allow me to demonstrate. This is my favorite thing to do in life. You take out this little hypodermic needle, and you push the button on the side, and you set it down. It shuts down your damn phone. It gives you hope. That is the beginning of what I will call the unplug movement, which I think is going to arise. When 600 million jobs in the world are lost over the next 10 years, humans will not sit for that. There's going to be a new movement that's basically anti-tech, protecting humans and jobs. And it may come from religious circles, it may come from secular circles, but I'm convinced that that will happen. I also plan to lead it. So,
okay. I have a devil's AI's advocate question. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is there a chance the doom gloom case is overmade? There are many other instances of tech breakthroughs that spawned similar feelings, to say nothing of the greatest existential threat around 80 years ago, the atomic bomb. So, is there a counter argument?
Sure, and it's very easy to find it. Just listen to any techno-utopian talk about what the world is going to be like. And a lot of people want to believe that's true. I also want to believe that's true. But I have two things going against me. One, I'm a sociologist. And my job is to basically help protect society and not to be, you might say, unduly optimistic when warnings need to be given. This is a prophetic stance. It's something we take very seriously in our field. The other thing is just dispositionally, I'm always looking for the worst case scenario. And I can't help it. I'm trying to protect people and so on. But I think there is a world in which we and AI are more like partners than in a hierarchical relationship. That's going to be up to what we do now in the next 10 or 15 years. The decisions we make politically and in our relational lives and so on. So this is a very important moment to be alive in.
I do like the lane assist on my car.
Yeah.
When I'm on the highway.
Pretty great. Sure.
It keeps me in the lanes.
It's very useful.
I can eat Skittles and I
Right.
can drink a Pepsi. Public service announcement. Google now automatically uses AI to bring you your search results. Add -AI to your Google searches to remove this. So there you go. The question, though, is this. So many of our social problems are due to a lack of good stories to nurture our souls. What are the better stories we can be telling to strengthen our souls against this power that weakens them?
This is a wonderful question. Why did George Lucas create the Star Wars trilogy? To make a lot of money. No, that's not the right answer. He is engaging in myth-telling. And the Star Wars story, and he has said this in multiple interviews, is about man and machine. Darth Vader is a perfect symbol of what can go wrong when you have a bad relationship with machines. It becomes you. It overtakes you. You need it to live, but it takes your soul. Lucas and others have created alternative mythologies and stories that we can cling to and remember what makes us human and special and worth keeping. And I think those are the kind of stories that we want. One of the things I think we'll see in the future too is a movement toward items and objects and music that are stamped as created by humans. And we may want that. We may choose that, almost like a made in America kind of label. And that's something we can do as consumers, to choose the human-made songs, movies, and so on, because soon it will be difficult to tell the difference.
And we've talked about the sort of concomitant rise of the return to analog media.
Yes.
Among young people, right? It seems to signal that.
Break out your 8
as
tracks and
exactly.
your print books. And,
Yeah. Not to mention something like the Book of Common Prayer.
Yes, in print form.
Yeah, and an incarnational faith tradition,
Yes.
right? Political scientists are saying that we now live in a society where attention is the scarcest resource. How might AI become an engineer of the attentional economy?
Wow. Well, it seems like this is already happening. And the reading of algorithms, we're just on the beginning of being able to identify your preferences and completely monopolize your attention in a way that you will feel like you are indeed dealing with a person. I agree with this statement that attention is a currency now. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, how much do I have? What am I willing to give it to? Who deserves it? I don't think anything on your smartphone deserves it compared to talking with Amy or Florence or Bob. When we relate, we are living in the beloved community. And when we connect to devices, we're not doing anything. Choose people is what I'm saying.
I wonder if you don't mind if I read this prayer, which you reminded me of during your talk. Unfortunately, this was taken out of the 1979 prayer book, but this is from the 1928 prayer book. So it does, I apologize, it has gendered language, but the prayer is for every man in his work. And it says this: Almighty God, our heavenly Father, who declarest thy glory and showest forth thy handiwork in the heavens and in the earth, deliver us, we beseech thee, in our several callings from the service of mammon, that we may do the work which thou givest us to do in truth, in beauty, and in righteousness, with singleness of heart as thy servants, and to the benefit of our fellow men, for the sake of him who came among us as one that serves, thy Son, Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. What do you think of that?
Yes.
Yeah, right?
All the way.
I think it gets at pretty much everything you're saying.
Heart emoji.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr.
you.
Pieper.
It's been a pleasure.
We really appreciate it. Thank you all for being here. Please come back next week to hear Dr. Rob Reed, who is lurking in the shadows, who's here tonight, and who is a lecturer in philosophy at Baylor. Dr. Reed worked for Psycor, which was one of the original AI industries in Austin, and then decided to get a PhD in philosophy. So I want you to hear his story and to hear from him next week. So we will see you back same time, same place. Thank you all.